my parents, as I was growing up, always knew where they were when John F. Kennedy was shot. And I didn't quite understand how that was such an important event to them. And I was just a baby when that happened. And then I always remember my grandparents always knew exactly where they were when Pearl Harbor happened. Of course, I wasn't born then, but those are defining moments for their generation. 9/11 is a defining moment for my generation. Not for your generation, because you guys weren't here, but it was a defining moment. You ask anybody who was older than the age of 7 or 8 where they were and what they were doing on 9/11, and they will remember, and they will be able to tell you exactly what happened, because that was the day the world stopped spinning, basically.
Tuesday, just another normal day. Everything started out as usual. People going to work, kids headed to school. You could hear the sounds of neighbors talking, car horns honking, the hum of a regular day. You watched as your neighbor walked the dog. You could see the white puffs of an airplane stream. People were bustling about. In the park, people were strolling along, drinking their coffee. They were in no hurry. They had no troubles. They were enjoying their morning. The sounds of birds chirping, the rustling of squirrels, and a whistle of the breeze. But then at 8:46 a.m., everything changed. A silence fell upon our nation. A silence that had not happened since December 7th, 1941.
At the time, was staying home from teaching. I was 31 years old, and I had just had my daughter. She was 6 months old at the time, and my husband was at work. I remember sitting on the sofa with her and watching the news when the first plane hit the first tower in the Trade Center. And I remember nobody at the time knew what was happening. People thought maybe it was a mechanical error, but we watched that tower go up in smoke.
I was teaching 6th grade science, as usual, back at a school called Chapman Intermediate. It's what used to feed into E.T. Booth and then Etowah High School. But I remember that morning pretty clearly, it seems like. I remember our assistant principal coming down and saying, hey, make sure you don't turn on the TV, just keep them occupied. And we're like, well, that's kind of odd for them to ask that. And then we had the kids starting to check out for some unknown reason. And then word started to leak out from other teachers what had occurred. So we decided the best way to avoid the kids and keeping the kids' minds occupied off something else in case they heard it was to give them a little recess break. So we took the kids outside for recess.
I was at my first year at Dean Rusk. It was my first year in Cherokee County, and it was, we started school a little later than we started school, about mid-August at that time, so we were just still getting to know the kids. And I remember Connie Strickland, the art teacher, poking her nose through the door and saying, hey, Coach, you need to turn on the television. At the time, we had televisions in our classrooms, and I remember her coming in and saying, turn on the television. So we turned it on, and it was right after the first plane hit, and the news reports were still saying that it was an accident. But anybody that ever knows anything about New York knows that that was no accident. It was, planes just aren't allowed in that kind of area. So I knew there was more to it, even at the time that they started to announce that it was just an accident of a small plane hitting. And just didn't make sense to me. It didn't make sense to anyone else that was from New York.
And the day of the terrorist attacks, I was in 4th grade. All day, I did not know what was going on. It was just a normal day. And when I got home, my grandmother would pick me up from the bus stop, and every day, and we would walk home together. And she asked me if I knew anything, and I didn't know what she was talking about. And on our walk home, she told me what happened. But as a fourth grader, I had no idea what she really meant. I think even an adult wouldn't really be able to comprehend that in just a conversation.
9/11, I was actually a senior in high school. I was doing Sequoia, not far from here. And the first I heard about it was during lunch, I think. I walked into lunch and someone told me that we were attacked by terrorists, and I was looking around like, the school? I didn't really know what was going on quite at that point. And then they said like, no, America, and obviously I didn't know what was going on, so I was like with guns and stuff, and I pretty remember it pretty well. And she's like, no, and she started explaining what happened, and that was obviously the point where everyone's at lunch, so we were talking about it. I think I ended up going to the band room because we had a TV in there, and we started watching what was going on a little bit in there because I had band for the next class, I believe, anyway. So we just kind of ate lunch in there and watched what was going on. And I just remember it was very surreal.
So my parents lived in Florida, so I picked up the phone and I called, and I'm talking to my dad. I'm like, hey, are you watching the news? And he's like, yeah, we have it on right now. This is just horrible. And they're saying, well, it's a commuter plane. We don't know what's going on. And then the weirdest thing happened. So the first plane hit the North Tower at 8:46 in the morning. So I was on my phone with my dad. Now, you got to remember, this was before text messaging. This was before social media. So the only way you could get in touch with people was by phone. So I'm on the phone with him, and we both have our TVs on. And all of a sudden, I hear my dad say, oh my God, here comes another plane. And my dad and I watched this live on television together as that second plane just slammed into the South Tower. And that was the moment you knew, okay, this isn't an accident. They did this on purpose. Because you saw, I mean, that was deliberate, and that plane tilted. It did it on purpose to hit as many floors as possible so the wings would hit the building.
I remember September 11th, 2001, like it was yesterday. That day will always be fresh in my mind. Nothing like that ever happened in my lifetime. I was at E.T. Booth Middle School, and I was observing classrooms for school, and we got an announcement that a plane had hit the North Trade Center. At first, we were assuming that maybe the pilot fell asleep or passed out. Never at the beginning thought it could have been a terrorist attack. That didn't happen. But then after the first plane went into the tower, a few minutes later, a second plane flew in to the South Tower. And we knew that it couldn't have been a coincidence. A little while later, we heard about the plane that hit the Pentagon and the one that went down in Pennsylvania, and the news stations were saying that it was a terrorist attack.
And we went back in. One of us, the teachers, took turns going back and checking things out, and that's when we saw that a plane had hit one of the towers. At first, we thought it was, just a tragic accident, and then we found out that another plane hit, and at that point, it dawned on everybody that this wasn't done on purpose. And I just remember that whole morning. That's all the adults, the teachers could really think about and concentrate on was that. We tried our best to, we did carry on the day as normal as we could, but the kids were checking out pretty frequently, and people were beginning to ask why.
So we're watching it pretty intently, and then funny thing was the principal comes around and tells us we had to turn television on. But you know me, I kind of do my thing. So I looked at Dr. Blackwell, and I said, Dr. Blackwell, I have a lesson plan on your desk by lunchtime. And he allowed me to keep the television on, and my students are one of the only students in Cherokee County that day that got to watch it unfold in front of them. I still have kids that come up to me and thank me for that.
And we we saw people being injured and not knowing what was going on, and it was a very scary time. There were two other planes, one of which hit the Pentagon, and the fourth plane we believe was aimed at either the Pentagon or the White House, but the passengers on that plane rallied together and ensured that that plane did not hit a place that would injure more American people.
So at 9:59, I was back on the phone with my dad, and we were watching again, and all of a sudden, saw it live on television. The South Tower it didn't fall, it collapsed like pancakes. Just boom, 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 boom. You're like, it's like the Titanic. They said the Titanic couldn't be sunk. These are World Trade Centers. Like, how is this happening? And when you watch it happen live, you knew all those firemen were in there. You knew all the police officers were in there. You knew all the people were still in there. And you knew there was no way these people could survive. So the South Tower collapsed, and then, like 4 minutes later, Flight 93 crashed in Pennsylvania. So these events just were like boom, 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 and it was so inconceivable as to what was happening. And then you hear that they put President Bush on Air Force One. Air Force One is up in the sky somewhere, being escorted by fighter planes. He's not landing anywhere. They're trying to keep him safe. They have taken the vice president out of the White House and put him in a secret bunker. Rumors were that Flight 93 was supposed to hit the Capitol building. Just all kinds of rumors going around. It was very frightening. You didn't know what was going to happen next. And then, less than 30 minutes after Flight 93 crashed, the North Tower collapsed.
September 11, 2001 really changed my life. So I was woken up that morning at a little bit after 9 by my mom to tell me that there was a plane that hit one of the Twin Towers at the World Trade Center. And at first I was like, what did you say? And so I got up and we put on the TV, and we were just watching, and we were wondering what was going on and all of that. And then all of a sudden we saw the other plane come and hit the next tower, and we knew then that life as we knew it was really about to be done. I was a little bit scared because I knew that there were a lot of people still in New York, my family and my friends, that were directly impacted. My uncle was a police officer, and he was a first responder, and we couldn't even contact him for the first 3 or 4 days, so we didn't know if he was alive, if he was dead, what was going on. He is fine. He was fine then, so for me it was a happy ending, I guess, but for many people, they were directly impacted. I know people who lost their moms and their friends, and it was pretty scary.
I remember after the towers collapsed, the ashes all over the fire trucks and the police cars and the people that had escaped. It just covered everything.
Less than 30 minutes after Flight 93 crashed, the North Tower collapsed. And it was the same thing. You think that really tall building would just go like this. It just came in upon itself. And then just the billow of smoke and debris, and the people they were showing the people that were trying to get out of the way of the smoke cloud. Have you ever been in Manhattan? So Manhattan, like the buildings are like tall, and it creates these tunnels. And when this smoke, it was just shooting down between the buildings, and these people were all running for their lives. And they showed people that were like getting under cars and trying to get into businesses just to get out of the way of the smoke. And then afterwards, they were just covered in this soot. Just, I mean, it was in their eyes, it was in their mouth, it was everywhere. And they had to evacuate the southern tip of Manhattan.
It was a bizarre feeling because I have family and friends up there, and I knew I had a friend that worked in the 104th floor for Toys R Us, and we were all nervous about him. He was a good old college friend of ours that we all keep in touch. This is 20 years ago, so we were still pretty close to out of college. And when we got there, or when we heard about it, our first thought was to go, hope Sam's okay. And he took a sidetrack that day. Didn't think anything about it. He went to the Toys R Us satellite office in New Jersey for the morning and didn't tell anybody. Why should he? He didn't know anything was going to happen. But he was on the train going in, and he was late getting to work because of that stop. So we never knew he wasn't on the 104th floor. It was about 5-6 days later before we found out. Even his wife and kids didn't know where he was.
The days that followed, we would be glued to the TV, and anywhere you went, the news would be on, and you just see those same scenes over and over again. And those are, I think, my most vivid memories. It's just what I would see. You still see it. It never leaves your mind.
Back then you could just go into an airport and you could just travel and you go through and get on your plane and go along your merry way. And since that day, that is not the case anymore. You have to go through security, and it's this big, long process. And I don't know that I'll ever actually get used to that. And you guys probably, if you have flown, you don't know any different. But that was a definite change.
We saw our nation in fear. We saw our nation also rise up, and we saw our first responders and civilians 24 hours around the clock looking for survivors, people trying to assist people who had lost someone and taking care of each other. And those people, those are our heroes, because they put their lives on the line to ensure that American people survived.
Manhattan's an island, and people were trying to get off, but they had shut down the bridges. They had shut down because they were scared that somebody was going to try to blow up the bridges. We didn't know. So they were sending boats across from New Jersey to pick people up and get them off the island, and they're just covered in stuff. And I just remembered, like, all the police officers and firefighters that hadn't been there, they were all rushing towards it. Everybody else was trying to get away from it, and all the first responders were all trying to get to it. It was the most surreal experience I've ever experienced in my life. I will never experience something like that again. I hope to never experience something like that again.
I remember that first little bit, though, afterwards, it was interesting how America reacted to it. Very different from today. Everyone kind of banded together to help everyone out. For some reason, I distinctly remember a bunch of senators and congressmen getting out on the steps and singing "God Bless America." And that, I don't think that would happen in this day and age, but we live in very different times now. But yeah, everyone was just we all wanted to work together, we all wanted to help each other out, and it was Oddly, it was a scary time, but at the same time, it was kind of peaceful because everyone was working together, trying to help everyone out. That was, I guess, the silver lining of it all.
Our president at the time, George Bush, everybody's calling. We gotta retaliate. We gotta retaliate. We were lucky to have somebody that was patient. Get the ducks in a row because it's so easy to want to strike back, and hopefully we learn from that because we're in a time now. Patience sometimes pays off, and that's something I think we learned out of 9/11. That just retaliating, going head first, headstrong. It's you got to take the good with the bad and learn from all that stuff. That's why I hope, being a social studies teacher, that we continue to learn from history's bad as well as the good.
After 9/11, it seemed like everybody became one. We all stood together. I went and I went to buy a flag for my house. I had one, but it was a little faded. And I went to Walmart and they were sold out. And I went to Home Depot and they were sold out. And it seemed like everybody was flying a flag, um, just to say, you may have kicked us, but we're not going to stay down. We're going to fight. We're going to bond together. We're going to pray. We're going to love each other. We're Americans.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.